Alrighty. So, how does government actually work, and how do power systems actually work? This is going to be pretty important, and the reason this is important, sadly, you just have to know this so you don't get manipulated as easily. That's basically one of the main reasons. Or if you choose to contribute and be part of that power system, you have to know how it works. Now, there are democracies and there are dictatorships. Although there are many other forms of government, like oligarchies, plutocracies, democracies, monarchies, as some examples, the main two are democracies and dictatorships. So this is because both democracies and dictatorships are both ends of extremes, and the overall general principle of centralized power towards one person, which is a dictatorship, or a few maybe, like an oligarchy or plutocracy, versus spread out power distribution to the people, which is more so a democracy and a republic. Now, in most cases, governments are never fully one system. They are a mix or a combination of systems, which is why I have this little chemistry picture right here, because they're both mixing, right? They usually incorporate multiple systems at once. Now, an example is the United States being a democracy and a plutocracy, which we'll get into why it actually turned into more of a plutocracy. It's a ruling called Citizens United that happened sort of recently, which is sort of sad. Versus Russia, which is an oligarchy and a dictatorship combined, or China, which is an authoritarianism government and a plutocracy combined. Now, each form of government is a combination of multiple different kinds of these things that I've mentioned before, like plutocracy, democracy, all this stuff, right? And it can sort of like lean a little bit more towards one way or another. It's sort of like on a spectrum. But the underlying way of how each works is exactly the same. And it is through understanding power systems as a whole that you will get to see what I mean. Now, how do power systems work? And also, why is it important a little bit? Now, as of humans today, power systems are unavoidable, and understanding how they work in society is crucial to understanding how the whole world works as a whole. Now, lacking understanding of this will lead you astray, especially in the world of politics, and you will be manipulated very easily. There are so many diehard Republicans and so many diehard Democrats. They are all examples of people who are easily manipulated and they don't understand how simple power systems work. Now, this can be demonstrated by something like a pyramid scheme, but it's not exactly quite the same thing. So it's sort of it looks a little bit like this. Yeah, a little bit like this. We'll get into it. Now, each form of government looks a bit different, but knowing the general model is what lets you determine who has the power in your government, which we'll get into all of those as to why it's important. So what power systems look like in a democracy? So what do they look like in a democracy? Well, basically, this is you. Let's say you are the president, or George Washington is the president, right? Well, George Washington, he has to give money to all these different people. This is church and state aren't really related anymore, but they sort of do have an influence. So he has to give money to all these different people. These are what we'll call his keys to power. And each of his keys of power have to also give money to all of their underlings as well. So they all have other people that they have to manage over, right? And they have to keep track of and ask basically what's going on. Are you doing the right thing? Yeah. Now, all of this eventually leads down to these people on the bottom contributing, and all of this money going right back up to the treasury. And then from that treasury, it goes straight back to him, and then he redistributes it basically. Now, you might say this money is basically coming out of thin air. No, it's being made in one way or another, usually some sort of good or service in most cases, right? Like, let's say they're, I don't know, making food, right? Farmers could be like an example. There's plenty of examples. But basically, each person has more people underneath them who they have to give money to. So all these people have to give money to the next person. And they have to give resources to them. And democracies have tons of these. So there are tons of people. There are tons of keys to power, as you can say, in order to keep this central person right here, this president, from having dictatorial power, dictatorship power. And to keep their power in check, basically it denies them from having as much power. Power systems in dictatorships look like this. There's only two keys, And I didn't really draw the treasury one like I did here. There's a red arrow, right? But it's basically the bottom line. Same thing. Both of these just feed right back into dictator. Dictator distributes the resources, right? Dictators don't necessarily have many keys, and any useless keys are actually eliminated very quickly. Kim Jong-un, as an example, he would basically kill off his useless keys, or keys he thought were trying to betray him because they're trying to take over, right? Yeah. So as we can see right here, this usually in most cases is related to like oil. This best case is oil. Best obvious case is oil. Actually, I'll say it right here. So dictatorship economies usually, though, unlike democracies. So democracies have productive citizens. All of these citizens are actually productive. They contribute something to that economy. So our little bank guy right here, we can also consider him maybe like a sugar tycoon. He owns all the sugar, right, and distributes sugar to make all these food products, which I don't believe in. But regardless, I don't think that's healthy, but that's besides the point. It could also be maybe like an oil tycoon as well. It could be an internet company, you name it, right? It doesn't really matter. There's tons and tons of people here. We have the military, we have political, politics is a very small point. Political parties, politics is a very, very small part to what makes the United States democracy work as well. We have our little police officer right here, and he's basically maintaining the internal, we can call this like the FBI or the police. They maintain the internal civil order, and these guys maintain external civil order, I guess you could say, and they basically protect the United States or allow the United States to invade other countries. And then we have the media right here. The media does media stuff and basically tells the citizens to basically influencing everybody else, right? You get the point. There's tons of keys to power. Now, dictatorship economies are often based on a natural resource. Blood Diamond, if you've ever seen that movie, right? It's a pretty good movie. Gold mines, food like chocolate or oil. Oil is probably the best example, honestly, which in most cases, more than not, people, like slaves basically, can keep the resources pumped out even with constant civilian deaths. Civilians have no say in the power systems, and they are often slaves. These resources are often sold to other countries. So they will sell their oil to other countries, they will sell their chocolate to other countries, right? That sort of a thing. So who controls the power in each system? You might have heard like, what about a monarchy? What about a plutocracy, an oligarchy? What about right? So we'll go over all of them. In a monarchy, the power is centralized at the top. And even though the keys do exist, they do not have the same level of power than the monarch, or the dictator is sort of the same thing. In an oligarchy, the power is centralized with the second most keys having a large majority of the power and the say in the decisions. And by the second most keys, I mean all of these people right here. This is basically what would make an oligarchy. Instead of this person having a lot of the power, it's these people, which actually a lot of medieval Europe sort of was oligarchies because they were all nobles. In a plutocracy, the power is with the keys which control the wealth. So all these banker people right here, or maybe your internet company as an example, or maybe Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, all those people who control the wealth have most of the power. That's what a plutocracy is. In an authoritarian government, the power is with the keys which control the military, and the military act as the police as well. So as we can see right here, the authoritarian government would be something like the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, right? In a dictatorship, the power is with the keys which control the military. Now, this also means that the military keys are granted more power. So in a dictatorship, these guys have quite a bit of power, and the dictator has to be careful of these guys quite a bit. Also has to be careful of these people, but I don't know if you've noticed, but like in dictatorships anyways, the next dictator is even worse than the last one, right? And it's because these people get into power, and then we'll go into why corruption is also inevitable as well. In a democracy, the power is with the citizens that contribute the most during the voting process. So this changes from what you define as a citizen. And I don't even think everybody should have the right to vote, also, in my opinion. I think that's a pretty bad decision, but regardless, it's a completely separate thing. This can change from country to country, but citizens which do not contribute to the vote are not prioritized, and resources are not allocated to them. So let's say Gen Z doesn't vote, right? Well, they're not necessarily prioritized or looked after. Let's say farmers don't vote, right? Or their vote isn't really that big of a portion, then resources are not allocated to farmers, that sort of a thing. Now, why exactly is corruption necessary, and why is it inevitable? Now, you might ask, what exactly does corruption serve? Corruption is evil, and no morally good person would do it, right? Well, corruption, to keep it simple, is supplying the keys to power with more resources. These resources let their underlings repeat the same process, because remember, all of these keys have to worry about the same thing. They all have to worry about this feeding other people one step down. They have to give resources to the next person one step down, because their underlings have the exact same problem right here. So just because you give all of this money, let's say you start cutting money to this guy, right? Well, what about all these guys? And then what about all these guys, right? That sort of a thing. They get less money, right? And sometimes that affects them negatively, and this guy looks at it and goes, hey, I don't want that to happen, right? Well, in a democracy, the nice thing is if you do cut this power to this guy can't just like throw a coup and rebel, but in a democracy, in a dictatorship, they definitely can. This chain keeps repeating all the way down, and it applies to every single organization or power system, and it is all supplied in this way. Now, this is exactly why you see dictators stay dictatorships. Dictatorships stay as dictatorships, and the next dictator who gets into power seems to be even worse than the last one. So this guy right here, let's say somebody replaces him, he dies, and this guy replaces him. Well, this guy is even worse than this guy. He's even doing even more cruel stuff than this guy was doing, right? We'll get into the money side of that, though, eventually. It's also why you see democracies have all these complicated loopholes with the law, especially. It's so certain keys to power, like big companies, internet companies is one example, are providing these presidential candidates with campaign contributions. And they will provide them with campaign contributions, and they'll say, hey, I want you to make a law so that it prevents other foreign internet companies, as an example, to provide service in the United States. And in doing so, what do you have? You have trash internet providers in the United States. Nobody likes Verizon. Nobody likes all these Xfinity. Nobody likes any of these people. They provide dog shit internet. Google Fiber is the only one that people would like. It actually works really fast, works really well, and it's the only trying to have a say in the market. But it's really hard because of laws, right? Really stupid laws and loopholes and stuff, which is how the corruption starts in the first place. So basically, once in power, the president will do favors for that company. Maybe it's giving the company certain government contracts. Maybe it's giving them a tax write-off. It's maybe a certain legal loophole that prevents other foreign internet companies from existing, right? The list is endless. The bottom line is they're returning the favor. The president, in this case, is returning the favor to those people who helped him get in power. Sometimes the company may be one you think is worth supporting. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. So let's say you're the president, right? Or you're a candidate, a presidential candidate. You want to support nuclear power, right? You don't want to support coal-provided power. So you would give all those nuclear power companies a chance and say, basically, and you'll say, hey, if you fund me and if you provide towards my campaign contribution, and if I win, I'll write loopholes for you, and I'll give you tax write-offs, and I'll give you government contracts and all this other stuff, right? And then that company is going to say, sure, great, I'll do that. So then they'll give you campaign contributions, and then if you win, then you'll help them out, and then they win and you win. They'll help you out later after you get out of office as well. It's a long thing. Yeah, a little sort of bribery, I guess, in one way or another. But regardless, well, the thing is, some company might be worth supporting, some company might not be worth supporting. And in some sense, this sort of is good because this gives you like a choice of corruption. You get to choose which one that you want to stand for. Do you want coal power, which causes more pollution and is less efficient, or do you want nuclear power, which is more efficient and it doesn't cause all this pollution, right? So therefore, you would take the company of the nuclear power, and then you would give them the contracts, and you'd give them all that stuff. So the thing is, of why is it inevitable? Also, as well, if we go back to this slide right here, and we see that the Treasury goes back up here, and then this goes into your pocket, or not your pocket, but it basically goes to you, and then you have to distribute all these resources, right? You have to distribute all of the money from the Treasury to fund all this other stuff. Now, let's say you want to be the person in power and you want to be not as corrupt as the previous person in power. How can you do this, and is it even possible? Now, this is an example of why corruption is inevitable. When you want to be less corrupt, you are taking away resources from this guy right here, the one supporting you, and giving it to all of these people right here, these individuals. Now, you could be doing this in multiple different ways. Maybe you want to build them roads. I am against roads, but regardless. Maybe you want to build them libraries. It doesn't really matter. This guy right here, as you can see, he needs these resources that you are giving him, and he's the one who funds your campaign contributions. These people, they don't fund your campaign contributions. Now, the thing is, this guy right here, he has the exact same problem as you. He has to distribute resources, and he has to distribute them to other people. And if he doesn't, he could be replaced, right? And he has to actually be good at the job as well. He has the same problem than you. Now, while you promise to help all of these people, your competition might say the exact same thing than you. They might say, that's right, I'm going to help you guys too as well. But they won't. And they end up helping the other guy, this guy right here instead. And it's to keep themselves in power. This is super common, by the way. And this is, if you ever want to know why politicians lie so much, this is part of the reason, if we didn't already know this, by the way. So the thing is, let's just go back up here. The problem is when you try to be less corrupt, where do you think money, let's say you're trying to make roads with, or maybe money that you're trying to build a hospital, or maybe money you're trying to build a public library, or a whatever, okay? A public sort of a thing, something for the public. Well, the problem is that this takes money from the Treasury. This shrinks the money from the Treasury, and then this distributes it into nowhere, basically, okay? It goes to nowhere. Not to any of these people helping you stay in power, okay? It goes nowhere, absolutely nowhere. You can maybe consider it sometimes going to a political party. I wouldn't even consider it going to a political party because these guys aren't really in the benefit always of the public as well. They're more so for ideals. So, and some other things. Anyways, this goes nowhere. Now what happens? This means the Treasury shrinks. Now you have less money to distribute to all of these other people who also need money. And they need to do the exact same thing that you do, except one step down. So now, what happens? You get kicked out of power. These people don't want to help your next campaign. They're not going to help your next campaign. You're only in office for one term. Maybe you can do a lot of work during that time, but in most cases you can't. And the reason is because, once again, in a democracy, these people, the power is so distributed amongst all of these other people that you are not the one able to make that decision. So you get kicked out of power. Yeah. Now, just remember, the thing is, you have many keys, not just this guy right here, but you also have all of these, and plenty more actually in a democracy. And in democracy, there's so many keys to power. Now, you have to have your resources go to the people who are keeping you in power. And if they don't, your competition, somebody else, will offer the keys a better deal and replace you. And then it's cooked. Now, the left, the right, and the United States. So what I mean by that, what do I mean? The left, the Democrats, and the right, Republicans. Well, both parties, they claim that they want freedom, yet they both restrict freedom in their own ways, regularly. It's kind of funny, actually. just to show you this whole political party thing. This is just a really small portion, very, very small portion of what actually makes a democracy function. Political parties don't do as much as you think. The left, or at least in today's day and age, they don't. The left restricts freedom of speech, and as an example, cancel culture, right? The start of the Me Too movement and other people's found guilty before even proven innocent, and lives were ruined over simply saying the wrong thing. So basically, the left restricts freedom of speech, while the right will restrict freedom of body, meaning you don't actually have full autonomy or full control over your own body and what you do with your body. So an example could be birth control, which is very common, right? Obviously, we know the right doesn't really like birth control, or the hard right anyways doesn't like birth control. Or maybe you can't do drugs for some reason, or you don't have full autonomy over your body for one way or another, okay? It's maybe like mushrooms, or I don't know, whatever drug you want to do, okay? Doesn't really matter. Both of these parties support completely different keys to power, and they are a very, very small part of the picture when it comes to power systems, especially in the United States, and that is more so because of something that happened sort of recently. So, those who think the United States is still a democracy are living in the past. It is somewhat of a democracy, and it has some instances of a democracy, but it is much more clearly transitioning into a plutocracy or an oligarchy. And as we can see here, this is big business, and this is the candidate. The big business is basically manipulating the candidate, right? This is sort of what actually happens. These guys actually basically manipulate this guy at the top a lot more, or these guys at least anyways do. And the reason is because, and the reason is because of something called Citizens United, which I'll get into eventually. But if you want clear examples of it becoming more so of a plutocracy or an oligarchy, are one, Diddy getting away with what he's done, or many other very influential figures not being arrested for clear crimes. I'm pretty sure Diddy ordered a hit on people, if I remember correctly, like Tupac. He was involved in that, right? And he is not getting anything, like nothing's happening, right? A little suspicious, huh? Or extremely wealthy people in the U.S. having a huge say in elections, as another example, which is something that happened recently. It happened in 2010, actually. That was the turning point of very, very bad things. The United States Supreme Court case passed in 2010 is what allowed for companies to spend unlimited amounts of money on political advertising. And this is called the Citizens United Supreme Court case. In doing so, this turned the United States into more so of a plutocracy than a democracy. So it's pretty messed up. But yeah, that happened. Now, how do you get rid of all of this? How can you escape all of this? The problem is you can't. And the reason is because of the middleman problem. You need a middleman, sadly, because humans aren't angels. The government acts as the middleman in many, many scenarios, and sadly, the middleman is basically mandatory. Now, an example of the middleman being necessary today is crime or justice, or the military, or banking and currency, infrastructure, education. So many sectors of middleman, all of which are necessary and related to the government. So let's go over each one of these, or a couple of them anyways. So crime and justice. Well, let's say that there's somebody who is out of control, okay? Who's going to take care of that? The middleman takes care of that. Let's say you have a dispute with somebody else. Who takes care of that? It's maybe a lawyer, or maybe it's the police, right? The bottom line is you're having a middleman take care of it. Or let's say another middleman problem. Let's say there's a group of people and they're trying to organize an attack on an area, right? We'll just call this the military. Russia is trying to, I don't know, do something with their military and try to invade another country, right? Who protects Russia from the invasion, right? How do they protect themselves from the Russian invasion? Well, it would be using a military, right? Or maybe banking and currency as another example. I mean, if we give full autonomy to the individual over banking and currency, which I do think that we should do, but at the same time, they have to be aware of the risks as well. What happens? They get scammed. That's called crypto. That's right. So even though I am a big proponent of crypto, you have to realize that when you do crypto, and if you give your private key, in cryptocurrency, you basically lose all of your money. You lose all of your money if you give your private key because of how it's set up. So this is a really big deal. And once again, who solves this problem? Let's say somebody steals from your account today. Let's say somebody hacks into your bank account and they steal $1,000 from it, right? How do you get reimbursed, and what happens, right? Who takes care of that? That's right. It's the middleman. All of that is taken care of by the middleman. Now, why the middleman is necessary in most cases, especially when trust between two parties or two people is not necessarily certain, it near guarantees trust. Near guarantees trust. It doesn't always guarantee trust because even the middleman can be a little bit shady sometimes. It near guarantees trust at the cost of efficiency, and that is known as bureaucracy. Now, to live without many of these institutions is only possible if people are willing to be more independent with their choices and their actions, and are willing to make the morally correct choice, even though in reality this almost never happens, and it probably never will as well. I hope it happens, but it's a really long reach. It's probably not going to happen. Now, some of these institutions are possible to live without. So, for instance, a lot of these institutions that I talked about before, like education as one, right? This is possible to live without. You don't need the government's education. You can do homeschooling. But the problem is it requires a lot of work and responsibility on the part of the individual. And many of them will never take that up. So what can you do knowing all of this information about how government works and how power systems work? Well, at the very least, first off, please, God forbid, don't let this be you, okay? Don't be manipulated. And don't be the classic Democrat or Republican supporter and be hardcore for one party. Don't be that stupid. Please, think for yourself. This is why this video is in the Think for Yourself playlist. Which, by the way, if you're interested in learning anything, like literally anything at all, go check out all my playlists. That's all you have to do. You will learn so much from all of my playlists. You have to realize that these parties themselves do not fully support you and have your best interest in heart. Nobody does, actually, sadly, in most cases. They have no reason to, especially, by the way, after the Citizens United passed in the Supreme Court, they have even less reason. These political parties have even less reason to support you. And much more power is in the companies, not the individual person themselves. And this is assuming that you're living in the United States anyways, because that's where the Citizens United was passed. Citizens United Supreme Court case was passed. Now, if you wish to change the world or be part of any power system at all, or create your own power system, any business as an example is a power system, it doesn't really matter. If you are managing other people, you are automatically in a power system. You must accept these rules. They are inevitable. You cannot escape them. If you wish to be president or in politics, you will have to choose to support a company one way or another, whether you like it or not, because of this, especially because of the Citizens United bill which was passed, especially if you aren't super rich in the United States. So choose the supporting companies well, because they will dictate the future. The problem is, this is sad, but in order to bypass all of this, campaign contributions and all this other stuff in order to get elected yourself, is you have to have all of the money. You have to have so much money, and you have, like, more than all these other institutions spend for campaign contributions combined, and use that to promote yourself. Now, maybe it is possible that with the internet in the future, this could actually change how people are elected, which if it does, that'd be a pretty big deal. That'd be a very, very big deal. If I could become president, would I? I don't know. It's a little risky because honestly, there's a lot of... I'd be going against some pretty big corporate conglomerates, which would most certainly want me gone. And I'm pretty sure they would. I'd be affecting their bottom line quite a bit. And I would be affecting their personal lives as well, because guess what? What happens if their company goes belly up? Yeah, that's right. They don't have the same amount of money that they do. They can't provide for their family, right? So this directly impacts their family. So it's like this is the problem, right? You have to realize the situation that you're in. Now, knowing how power systems work lets you identify which one you exist in, and an example of that is being government. Or what kind of government you're in, or it lets you identify its weaknesses and what they are reliant on. Just as I said before, campaign contributions, right? You could sort of identify that as a necessary thing in order to get elected. But the internet could potentially allow this to reverse, and you don't need campaign contributions anymore. You just need a platform, and other people might actually very well take interest into you and watch you and say, hey, I want this guy as president, right? Once again, I don't know if I'm going to be president, but that's a pretty risky thing to do. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you found the video helpful or informative. If you did, like, share, subscribe, comment down below, because it really does help the channel grow. And if you are interested in any more videos or watching any videos, want to see any particular videos, let me know down in the comments below. Hope you learned something valuable, because this video is, in my opinion, very, very important. Understanding power systems is a little bit more important, not because you can apply it, it's more so you cannot get you cannot be manipulated as easily, because there's a lot of also manipulation which happens in between companies, by the way. Like, in between these people are fighting for this position right here, right? These people are fighting for one of these positions right here. So this is sort of why you see sort of like corporate cutthroat behavior when it comes to tossing people aside and using them, right? This sort of a thing happens, and it happens because of corruption, because corruption is inevitable. So yeah, and hopefully knowing power systems helps you deal with that. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you found the video helpful and informative. I'll see you guys in the next one.